in court. Turn again, Community Council meeting guidelines, host Al Millspaw. Upon entering, Zoom members log in with TCC first last name. Zoom guests, put your first last name with your affiliation. Individuals calling in via the telephone must identify themselves as TCC members with their name, guests with their name and affiliation. The host can assist you. To mute, unmute, tap *6. To raise, lower your hand, tap *9. This meeting is open to the public and will be recorded. Therefore, there's no expectation of privacy. UACC members are residents. Oops, that's still my thing. TCC members are residents or one business owner within the boundaries of TCC. Only members may vote. To be recognized by the moderator, raise your flag or hand. Except for the chair and recognized speaker, all participants will be muted. Interlopers, violators may be removed. Turn your PC volume up. And note, this meeting will provide closed captions. All yours.
Thank you so much, Al, again, for stepping in and hosting our meeting this evening. So just so everybody knows, Al is from the University Area Community Council and has been a long time delegate to the Federation of Community Councils. So welcome to our meeting. So I will officially call this meeting to order and welcome everybody here. So let me get that written down. And so I'm Kathy Gleason. I'm currently acting president of Turnagain Community Council. So I appreciate everybody's attendance this evening. Let's see, I'm not sure. Ariel, are you logged in by chance? Ariel Wiggins? I'm not sure she is.
I don't see.
I don't believe there's any other board members present at the meeting this evening. So so I won't be introducing anybody else on the board. It's a good time to get away, I think, and everybody's busy this time of year. So why don't I'd like a motion to approve the agenda. And Al, if you would put the agenda up, and thank you, welcome everybody who's just joining in. So Al, if you would put the agenda up on the screen.
Yeah, let me
if you can. Typically we don't do that, but it's nice since we've got people that can screen share. And this was sent out on Friday and then again today. There's been a couple of changes to the agenda, or additions, I should say, since last Friday. So if I could entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Would anybody like to make that motion?
This is Kathleen. I'll move. I so move.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, John. Is there any objection to the agenda as presented?
Kathy, can you scroll down so we can, or whoever's controlling, scroll down so we can see the bottom, please?
That would be Al. So Al, can you do that for us, please?
Okay, the Northlink Aviation Development Proposal is a late addition and I object to that.
Well, if you look at the bylaws, it's the president who sets the agenda. After consulting with the board, the president ultimately is the one who sets the agenda. This came up yesterday and I communicated with Matt Sanders with Sand Lake Community Council. I told him we have a full agenda, but as a courtesy to another community council, I would give him 5 minutes. We're not going to take any, I don't expect us to take any action on that item. They're just wanting the West Anchorage Community Councils to know about the project.
Okay, respectfully, then I would ask that additional time be permitted for the project proponent who wasn't invited and wasn't informed of that for a project that has been out there for a year and a half.
I'm sorry. So you'd like what?
In addition to being a resident of the Turnagain Community Council, I am also Northlink's attorney. We would like some equal time to respond to the things that Mr. Sanders may present and present some additional information and resources for where people can find information about the project.
Okay, are you moving that as an amendment then?
I am moving that, yes.
Okay,
And I
can
would
I
be
have a
happy to
second, please?
provide that information.
Could I have a second, please?
This is
Anybody?
Becky. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Is there any objection to extending that agenda item to 10 minutes and allow for the attorney of the project to speak?
Kathy,
Yes.
this is Jonathan. Would you go back? Let's have a clarification of what's going on here with this gentleman that is adding an amendment, whatever he's doing, and exactly what you're speaking about, because I think that people are confused. Could you succinctly
Sure.
review what we're doing here, what you're doing, and what the gentleman is referring to?
Would that be all right, Madam President?
Yes, briefly.
Sure. The agenda as stated had nothing.
You might
specific-
introduce yourself, please.
Sorry, my name is Mike Schechter. I'm a resident of Turnigan. I also represent Northlink, which is the development that Mr. Sanders has been added to the agenda to speak about. The agenda as circulated through the various community council channels did not include any information about that. Typically, it's common for projects to have if someone's going to be speaking about the project, and I suspect that Mr. Sanders will be speaking in strong opposition to the project, to also provide an opportunity to the project proponent. This is a development on the south side of the airport off of Raspberry Road in the Sand Lake Community Council area. We would just like a couple of minutes to respond to things that Mr. Sanders might say and provide additional sources of information on the same exact topic.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Jonathan, do you have any
Do
questions?
we have a map of what we're talking?
Well, that would
about
be,
here?
if we do, that would be presented during that agenda item.
Okay, I think all folks should be able to express an opinion that have an interest specifically. So if we could proceed then and think about clarity, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So does anybody have any objection to amending the agenda to add an additional 5 minutes to the Northlink Aviation Development proposal?
No,
No.
problem.
Okay, then are there any other amendments to the agenda? If not, is there any objection to approving the agenda as amended? I'm not seeing anybody. Am I missing anybody? Is anybody raising their hand? Okay, then the agenda as amended is approved. Okay, since we do not have a secretary right now, we do not have meeting minutes. However, all of our Zoom meetings are being recorded, and the link to access the April 6th, 2023 TCC meeting is on the agenda. And so if you're interested in seeing what took place at our meeting last month, please go to that link. I do have a few announcements that I'll run through really quickly because we do have a packed agenda. But in no particular order, the Assembly is considering an ordinance to change the marijuana license permit from a 1-year annual renewal to a 2-year annual renewal or biennial renewal. So if anybody's interested in that, you might want to ask our Assembly representatives or contact the municipality about that proposal. Now we've had this in place for a handful of years. And so I think people are probably more comfortable now than they were at the beginning to have something like that get a 2-year, and the business is getting a 2-year renewal. There is an Alaska Railroad open house on this coming Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So there's got lots of things for kids to do and look at all the trains and so forth. So if anybody's interested in that, be sure and go to their website. The Anchorage Park Foundation announces that May is Bike Month, and specifically Friday, May 19th is Bike to Work Day. So I know people participate in that every year. So hopefully it'll be a nice day for that event. So you've probably been notified by Chugach Electric Association by now, and that you vote online this year or by mail by May 19th for election of 3 board member slots. So be sure and get your vote in before that date. So I think that's all the announcements I had. Does anybody else have any brief announcements they'd like to share? I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll move on to what's new in Turnagain. So we take 5 minutes at our meeting at this point, just for anybody to share anything that might be going on in our neighborhoods. Does anybody have anything to share at this point? There's nothing new going on in Turnagain.
Well, the snow is melting finally.
Thank you, Jonathan.
The next one is, of course, the skating rink at Turnagain Elementary School has been demolished.
Oh, Dan, that's under board report. So,
Okay.
or excuse me, that's under old and new business. So that's an agenda item that we'll take up later.
Okay.
Okay, if not, we'll move on and go to our executive board report. The board met last week I think it was last week. I've lost track of time. Let's see. The board met on April 24th. Just as I mentioned before, we have 2 vacancies on our executive board. The president and the secretary positions are open. So if anybody knows anybody, or if you would like to consider running for either one of those, we do have it in our bylaws. We can have a special election for consideration of filling one or both of those slots. So think about it, please. So the next board meeting has been scheduled for May 18th from 4 to 5:30. We haven't talked yet, but we have been meeting via Zoom. So I'm thinking that meeting will be Zoom, but may conflict with something, I believe what Carolyn Hall was emailing around earlier today. So that date may be changed. And so please make sure that you contact me or any member of the board, but probably me, if you're interested in Zooming in and participating, or if you want to be on our agenda, because that may be changed. So just so you're aware of that. So the next item is the Federation of Community Councils delegate meeting, and Carolyn Hall, our alternate, or our delegate, was not able to attend, but Dan Gleason, our alternate for that position, was able to Zoom in. And so Dan, you have the floor, and you can,
Okay.
they always cover a lot of things. So if you can be pretty brief, I would appreciate it, but.
Well, I'll go through bullet
Oh.
items, and then if anybody has any questions about it. The first thing was, of course, Mr. Wade Keys came and talked about the spruce tree giveaway, which is later on the agenda, so I won't go into that. And then we talked about the CIP project ranking survey, which is from the mayor's office, and so that's also coming out. And then AWW master plan update is out. and going on. And then, of course, we had the Sullivan Arena extension for the 90 people that was discussed. And then we got the homeless task force is being formed to ID potential shelter locations. And then we had the assembly report, which will be hopefully Anna will talk about that later. And then we had the school board report, which they went over budgets and certain items on there. School board report, FCC purchase of OWL for hybrid meetings. So that was a major item we talked about, and that's a possibility of doing hybrid meetings, both in person and other. And then there was FCC officer training for the community councils. So the treasurers, all the community council officers could get training. And then there was FCC officer nominations for the May election. So that's, the board, anybody that is a member of the community council and doesn't have to be a delegate for the FCC can get nominated for the FCC board. That's the gist of the FCC board meeting that occurred last month.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Does anybody have any questions for Dan? So if not, and that was that's what meeting, what date was that, Dan? Sorry.
Oh,
17th.
yeah, 17th. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good enough. And that's a hardworking group, so it's great that we're actively participating in that effort. Okay, continuing on with the executive board report. Something that has come up is excuse me, I just thought of another announcement that I would like to make since it does involve Turnagain. Just FYI, the Parks Foundation collaborates with the Anchorage Concert Association, and they do a summer concert series. And last year they had a concert down at Laneri Park. I wasn't able to attend, but I heard it was a great event. This year they are planning a concert at Balto Sepulveda Park for July 13th from 7 to 8 p.m. So you might want to mark your calendar. And the board discussed potential issues with parking, but didn't feel that it rose to the level that we needed to discuss it at our meeting. And so if anybody has any questions or issues with that, you might want to contact Anchorage Park Foundation.
Kathy?
If you live in that area. Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
If I could also mention on June, they're going to have their kickoff on June 1st, the concert at Goose Lake. So,
Okay.
yeah, that'll be the first one. And I will actually be hosting a booth there for anybody who wants from any community councils to sign them up too. So FYI.
Okay. Thanks, Al. Okay. So the next item under executive board report is the assembly has started a new initiative with regard to a clean slate strategy. And assembly member Felix Rivera reached out to the 3-4 community councils in West Anchorage, asking for one representative from the West Anchorage district to participate on this group that would be working with the assembly on trying to identify locations where homeless shelters or might be located around town. They're looking for more community council input. And so I was contacted by Spenard Community Council, and they wanted to offer up their vice president, Matt, what is his last name? I've got it right here. Matt-
Sanders.
Sorry, who said something?
Matt Sanders.
Oh, Matt Sanders, and you're the
Ah.
one on our agenda.
Yeah, no, different Matt.
There you are, Matt.
Oh,
Thank you
different
so
one?
much for speaking
Yeah,
out.
this is the gentleman in Spinard. This is a different topic.
Oh, sorry. Cheers. I'm
Oh,
excited
okay.
to talk too.
Yeah,
I'll mute. Sorry.
it's a Matt from Spinard Community Council. There's a lot of Matts running around here, so that's a good thing. Anyway, so the board, they didn't say that we needed to have council approval, so this is just a report. The executive board discussed Spinard Community Council's proposal to have their vice president serve as the West Anchorage representative on this initiative, this clean slate initiative. And the board unanimously agreed that that would be a good choice because there are some shelters and proposals for low-income housing, quite a few of them in Spinard. So the board went ahead and relayed that to the other West Anchorage community councils that we supported Spinard's representative to serve on that group, to collaborate with the assembly.
Kathy, that guy's name
What?
is Matt Duncan. Matt Duncan.
Thank you, Al. Matt Duncan. Okay, so the next item is the 10-year community council boundary review, and comments are due January 15th with regard to any kind of changes. It's a process that the municipality goes through every 10 years to review community council boundaries. And I had reached out to Spinard Community Council to see if they were looking at any kind of western boundaries on their part, which would be eastern boundaries on our part. If they were looking to do any kind of changes. And I chatted with Peggy Auth, who is on the board for Spinard Community Council today. And she said the process is moving forward. The committee has really kind of already taken some action, but this will go before P&Z Commission and ultimately the assembly approval. So her and I are going to get together in a couple of weeks to chat to see, if they've got any ideas and if we have any ideas, but there's no update right now. As far as last month, I shared with the council the information from a white paper from the municipality about all the community input who just made suggestions. Doesn't mean they'll be approved. They may be considered. And there were 3 related to Turnagain Community Council. So as time moves forward, we'll probably be looking at that again at our June 1st council meeting if we think that we want to propose any kind of changes to our boundaries. So you might be thinking about that. Let me know, or any of the board members know if you've got some thoughts on that. Then
Kathy,
yes.
real quick,
Oh,
you
thank
said
you, John.
you said comments were due on January 15th. Did you mean June 15th?
Oh, did I say January?
You did.
I apologize. Yes, I did mean June.
Okay.
Yes, my notes have June.
Okay,
Thank you,
just
John.
checking.
I appreciate that. Yeah, well, they started this process, I think, around January. So maybe that's what I was thinking. But yes, it is June. Thank you, John, so much. Okay, so the next item under executive board report is the Heritage Land Bank 2023 work program and 5-year management plan. That deadline is June 9th, 2023. And as typically the case, I review that on behalf of the council to see if there's any major changes with regard to Heritage Land Bank land within our boundaries, specifically parcels west of the airport, along the coastline, with a coastal trail that runs through them. And I looked at the draft the other day, and they are not proposing any kind of changes to that, but they are proposing some changes to their policy section. And there may be some that we want to take a look at more closely. So that will definitely be on our June 1st agenda to approve TCC comments that we would submit to that draft. And if anybody else is interested to collaborate with me on that, that would be great. Just let me know. And I don't see that Jackie Armstrong has called in to our meeting like she usually does. The brief update that's due to her diligence with regard to her working with Brad Coy, who is the traffic engineer for the municipality, with regard to heavy airport generated truck traffic on West Northern Lights, is and if you're longtime residents, then you know that there used to be truck weight limit signs at each end of Northern Lights before you get to the airport and around Lois Drive. And those signs were taken down. It's been about 3 to 4 years ago now. And various attempts to try and get them back up has failed. We've been rejected. So Jackie has taken it on herself to continue that effort, and she's made some progress with Brad. So he notified her on, let's see. Well, this was back in February, but that doesn't sound right. But anyway, he said that there is his update was on April 26th. So so they're proceeding with a process where they're going to be looking at looking at documentation about why the road is designated the way it is, how the road was designed and why. Just trying to document what kind of truck traffic is occurring, what companies might be involved. And so they're initiating that process. So that's a good thing. Let me see, I can read it now. The West Northern Lights upgrade from Nathaniel Court to Wisconsin road design documents. They're looking for all documentation, including TCC and Muni communications, about when those signs were put up and when they were taken down. So that process is moving forward, which is long overdue. And thank you to Jackie for really spearheading this effort and working with the Muni traffic engineer. Let's see, this just came up today. And so I wanted to let you guys know that a neighbor who lives on West 30th, just south of Turnagain Elementary and east of Lloydstill Park. And Karen, you have joined us. So thank you so much, Karen. Received a letter from her saying there's been, because of a lot of soccer use at Lloydstill Park in the summertime, that there's certainly been some negative consequences and impacts on a multitude of items. And let's see, Karen, if you just want to take like 1 minute, thank you so much for attending our meeting. And so the board has not discussed this, the council has not discussed this, but I appreciate you reaching out to Turnagain Community Council. So if you'd like to just briefly address everyone here attending this evening, I would appreciate it.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, President Gleason. Hi all, I'm Karen Pletnikoff. My husband Jamie Grund and I live at the end of 30th, where there's a small unimproved parking lot onto Lloydstill soccer fields and park and abutting Turnagain Elementary. And there's a lot of dust and dangerous traffic. And we've had 70 cars turn around in our driveway in a day because it's gotten so bad. And we're looking for some kind of relief for this, some way to improve the traffic flow. It's certainly not a road meant for this kind of use. And we just wanted to bring it to your attention. We're happy to share the letter of our concerns with anybody who's interested. If anybody has it and reaches out, we tried to reach out to some of the folks in APD at the traffic engineer's office, at Parks and Rec, and our assembly members and our council here, and we're looking forward to any ideas on how to improve it and really appreciate the opportunity to share it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So I know that there was a response from the person who is kind of a key player with regard to the organization Alaska Rush that uses those soccer fields, and indicated that they are trying to better enforce things and oversee things, but your response was that they've promised that before with maybe mixed results.
Sure, not really any improvement, and but we're looking forward to seeing if we can do it with some amount of enforcement or something, some compliance from the parents with Alaska Rush. But on the other hand, we would love to see that done by Alaska Rush as the primary driver of traffic in the summer. We think it's their responsibility for making money off of the park. But that won't repair the road or the parking lot or deal with the trash and the nuisance crime in this school zone. So I think there's still a bigger discussion, maybe even after we see some improvements in the traffic. But we're really grateful for their responsiveness and look forward to working with them.
Okay, and thank you so much, Karen. Probably we'll touch base again before we when we're setting the agenda for our June 1st meeting, and potentially have this back on our agenda.
We'll also follow up with parks and everyone in the meantime and bring you the latest we can. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate it. Okay, and I believe that was the last item under executive board report. So we'll go on to our regular reports, brief updates. So let's see, what kind of legislative representation do we have this evening at our meeting? There were legislative reports sent out with the agenda and the meeting notice from Senator Matt Clayman and Representative Zach Fields, but I don't believe I got any from any other legislative representatives or senators that fall within our boundaries. So
Kathy, I can briefly display them if you want me to.
Display what?
Their reports from.
Well, no, because people can read them. So
Okay.
yeah, thanks, Al. But I think if we don't have anybody here in person attending this evening, we'll just go ahead and move on. And of course, as always, please feel free to contact them if you've got any kind of input that you want to give on bills that are being, they're still considering. I think there's only 2 more weeks or so left in the legislative session. So there's probably a flurry of activity right now, I would guess. Okay. Assembly report. So Anna Brawley, our newer of the 2 representatives for the Turnagain Community Council area. Welcome. Anna was president of our community council last year. Clearly she's moved up in the world.
Well, that's gonna be relative.
So congratulations again, and please share your assembly report with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, and happy to be here and happy to see a lot of friends on the call. And of course, I live in Turnagain too, so I'm a member. But as you know, it seems like best practice to not participate as a regular member when I'm in my assembly capacity. So anyway, so I will also share that I was sworn in just over a week ago, so really late in the meeting on Tuesday the 25th, the last regular meeting of the assembly. So I am also very much a brand new baby assembly member, and I'm still getting my feet under me, figuring out what's going on. So I can provide some updates, most of which were things that happened, before I was technically on the assembly, but happy to see them move forward. And then certainly can answer questions, but also just to say I'm still getting even just my email inbox under control. So please patience as we move forward. But I'm happy to be here and happy to serve West Anchorage. So in terms of updates, I'll just briefly share, like I said, the last regular meeting was the 25th of April. Busy meeting. So in addition to certifying the election and recognizing the 5 new assembly members and 2 returning members, there were 7 folks who got elected or re-elected this past cycle. The assembly also passed the revised budget. So every year, we're on the calendar year, and then after the first quarter of the budget, that's when there's changes to both the revenue and expenditure side, and then that's where the assembly sets the mill rates and everything for property taxes. So that's why it's a critical time, and just happens to come right after the election. So there's a lot of amendments that were made, some good things funded, a lot of focus on housing. That's a huge priority of the assembly, certainly a priority of mine, and just finding ways to provide more affordable housing, get housing for folks experiencing homelessness online, and then thinking longer term about things like zoning reform and working out things like that. And I apologize, I hear a little bit of an echo, so I don't know if it's from somebody else's computer, but yeah, so let's see what else. So one of the things that was funded was a short-term extension or partial extension of shelter at the Sullivan. So as you guys know, it was scheduled to close on April 30th. And so there was a very short extension to Monday, May 1st to give a little bit more time to move folks out. And then there is funding available, keeping the shelter open through the end of May, specifically for 90 individuals. There was a limit. Folks who are experiencing a lot of the most difficult kind of medical issues, like not necessarily able to care for themselves in every capacity, and just having more time to deal with that very vulnerable population. Of course, as we know, we've seen a lot of folks, having to move out of the shelter, or who are already out camping or unsheltered in our community. So we know it's going to be a difficult summer for a lot of people, and I know folks are concerned about impacts on neighborhoods and impacts on the surrounding community. So certainly that's something that is not solved yet, but there's definitely a lot of work and a lot of effort. So some good news that we've seen. One is that there is an agreement between the administration and the assembly to open the Golden Lion. I know that's been a discussion, the former hotel in Midtown. So that will be short-term housing. And then there is some additional funding that was approved last week to help with the opening of that. So that's a great thing to be moving forward finally. Also, there are some projects that it has some capital funding from the municipality, but are being operated by a private operator. So the former Lakeshore Inn, just down the road from us in Spinard, off Spinard Road, that's coming online and actually accepting tenants. It's basically just a low-cost apartment building, so folks are moving in there. Also, the Barrett Inn, you probably have driven by there recently and seen, it's not in the best of shape, but they're the same organization who owns the former Lakeshore Inn, now called the Lake House, is also in process of upgrading the Barrett Inn. So they gave some updates at Spinard Community Council, and I had the benefit of hearing those and can share some of those today. So that's moving along. They hope to be opening in the next few months. There's some roof replacement and some other significant upgrades there. And then also just to say, the Alex Hotel in the vicinity of our area on Spinard Road that used to be non-congregate shelter, meaning people living in their individual hotel rooms. So that's also been stood down as of April 30th. So we're definitely in a transitional period, and yeah, looking for solutions. So other good news though, like I said, in addition to funding several, housing related work, such as a study of short-term rentals to be done in the city, looking at how we can increase manufactured housing. So basically housing that's built or pre-built and can be transported up here, or could even be manufactured here and constructed. Those are all ways to kind of increase the availability of housing. Those were all funded. I'm just checking on my notes. There's also going to be a big public process this summer with looking at where we can locate shelters. So Kathy already touched on that, and the representation by West Anchorage. I'm going to put some links as soon as I'm done speaking, because there's more information about the timeline for that, other ways you can be involved. Certainly, you know, we want the community to be engaged in that discussion. And I think everybody recognizes that, you know, having everybody concentrated in one neighborhood, historically, that's been Fairview for a long time and near downtown. That doesn't work for the neighborhood or for the people experiencing homelessness. And so really looking to find not just ways that we can have shelter capacity, but how we can spread that shelter capacity into more parts of the city, so that we have smaller shelters that are easier to manage, better places to live if you need to be in a shelter, and then you know, can manage those neighborhood impacts. So I'll share. There's Member Rivera adopted or put forward a clean slate strategy, and there's a timeline and more information about how to participate there. So there's been also a focus on, especially how do we address the needs of folks experiencing complex behavioral health needs, so mental health, substance misuse, all of the above, dealing with some complex trauma, and maybe also medical issues. There's a lot of folks out on the street now who need some additional help. So working on that. And then I think moving on just real briefly, just a few other updates. Thanks, Kathy, for mentioning Bike Month. It's exciting, and I always enjoy riding my bike. I can't wait to dig it out of the garage finally. So watch out for the gravel and everything on the road, but at least the snow is clearing. So in addition to Bike to Work Day on May 19th, yesterday was Bike to School Day. Maybe not the greatest weather. The snow didn't really want to cooperate for the kids out there, but we did still see some bikes out there. And just a reminder too, you know, as the weather warms up, you will see more folks on bikes, whether they're on our trails or sidewalks or the roads. So please take extra care, and especially if you see those kids out there, you know, make sure we're keeping a watch out for our school kids. And I guess the only other thing to mention is the citywide cleanup is happening. So that's an event sponsored by the Anchorage Chamber of Commerce. I believe it officially starts tomorrow. It's usually the month of May. And there's some public events they're doing. And then there's also opportunity for folks to organize teams, or just, you know, go out and pick a street or pick a park and do the cleanup. So I'll share those links as well. And then finally, I'm going to put in the chat my contact information. So I do have an official Assembly email you can reach me at. In fact, folks probably already have. And so I'm still catching up on those. So please feel free to reach out, or especially include me and the other Assembly member, Cameron Perez-Verdia, on anything that you'd like us to, you know, keep an eye on or to possibly help with. And then the other things I'll put in the chat is there is an Assembly update. So that's what I'm using as my cheat sheet this evening. But it's got a lot of great updates. It comes to your email, I think maybe every other week, at least a couple times a month. So I'll link to the most recent one, and then also how to sign up for that. And with that, I'll stop and see if there's any questions.
In a clinical study, the most common infections were urinary tract and respiratory tract infections. Tell your doctor if you have a history of infections, or if you have symptoms of it.
Anybody have any questions for Anna? Okay, if not, you're getting off easy.
Yep. And like I said, I'm still ramping up, but please keep me in the loop, and I'm happy to help, and just trying to manage all the things going on, because as we know, it's a lot.
Yeah, well, thank you, and we appreciate all the work that we know that's ahead of you, and that you'll you know, hopefully keep in touch with us and keep us informed about things that you know that we might want to be involved with or get more information on. So thank you so much, Anna.
Sure. And actually, I'm sorry, Kathy, I just realized one more thing I made a note about. You had mentioned the marijuana licenses and the action to make them biennial. That actually did pass, I believe is on the 25th. So that was already approved. And that's basically at the state level, marijuana licenses are still renewed annually, but the city was reviewing their procedures, and there's a local municipal license as well. So that's what is now biennial, and that's matching the way that the state handles alcohol licenses. So that actually has already been approved.
Did you get any opposition to that or pushback from that change?
I can follow up. I'm not aware of any. That wasn't something I was tracking.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not aware that there was any pushback on that.
Just curious. Okay, thank you so much, Anna. Okay, mayor's report. Is there anybody from the mayor's office that would like to provide a brief report? We always put it on our agenda just in case there is some, we did have somebody for a few months that provided information from the mayor's office, but it doesn't look like there's anybody attending this evening. So we'll move on to school board report. Do we have a school board member with us today? I know that they were going to change who would come to our meetings. So I don't know who was appointed to Turnigan now. It's probably starting this month. I didn't get any kind of notification from anybody that I'm aware of. So looks like we won't get any kind of report from the school board. So our meeting is going by fairly quickly, which is a good thing since we have so many items on our agenda. So but hopefully we'll hear from school board next month. Let me write that down. Okay. So airport report. Let's see, who do we have from the airport this evening? Is Megan Peters? I don't see her. And oh, there's John. John, welcome.
I'll try to be fairly brief. Looks like you've got a lot on the agenda.
I can barely hear you, John.
Uh-oh, that's not good. How about now?
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, we have on our airport update, we're talking a little bit about the parking garage rehabilitation project. Parking garage is going to be have a couple levels shut down all through the summer out of the 4. So we're going to be switching back and forth between floors as we're working on primarily removing the asphalt and portions of the membrane under the asphalt and other miscellaneous repairs. But that project is moving along. I'm going to be real brief on the second item, which is a notice that the North Link Aviation Cargo Development Project that Mike and Matt are going to talk about as an added agenda item here in a little bit is out for public notice. The EA environmental assessment is out for public notice and review by the public, and there will be a public meeting on that on the 30th. And I'll let Mike talk about that, but it's going to be at the Millennial Hotel or the lakefront, excuse me, I'm behind times. And some good news, the airport won the Balkan Post Award for snow removal, primarily as a result of our large amount of snow we had to deal with this year, but also the great team we have that does snow removal. So that's the second year in a row we've won that for large airports. And we've been a winner of that many times in the past. Lakehead Seaplane Base, we are either in the first or second week of May, depending on whether we're going to shut down the runway, the gravel strip for about a week and do some maintenance on it. Also, there is scheduled an MS walk on May 6th this weekend around Lake Hood. So if you're interested, there's some information on our update on how to find out more about that. Summer travel, we've got the typical addition of many flights coming back, both from current year-round carriers and other non-seasonal carriers. And probably biggest note is Air Canada is coming back with flights to Vancouver, BC. Both Eurowings and Condor are going to have direct flights to and from Frankfurt. And Sun Country is going to be flying directly to and from Minneapolis this summer. So lots of the usual increase in service to handle all of our tourists. Also this weekend, not at the airport, but out at the Palmer Fairgrounds, the 6th and the 7th this weekend will be the Alaska General Aviation Gathering, which moved out there 2 or 3 years ago, and apparently it's going well for them out there. So for the near term, they will not be at Anchorage with that great annual event. As far as a PFAS testing around the airport goes, I think many of you know that we've had a consultant do testing of a large number of residential wells around the airport. I think they've actually tested about 90 to 95 wells. We had a few that had detected or slightly above detected levels, and we had one that was over the drinking water standard, which is just north of Lake Spenard, and we are in the process of working to get them connected to city water. They're the only residents in the area that's not connected to city water right there. And then we've always looking for, employees. There's a link here to find jobs that are available at the airport. And then that's the other things that I'm going to talk on are the master plan update. We are just kind of getting underway on our master plan update, which is kind of a plan for the future development of the airport. And they're in the process of finalizing the inventory collection, which is one of the first steps. And they're just getting going on the aviation forecast for aviation activity. Basically try to project how many aircraft are going to be coming into the airport in the future. There is going to be on May 31st in the afternoon, a joint meeting of two committees that we have to help us guide the master plan development. One of them is the Airline Advisory Committee, which is primarily made up of airline folks. And then one is the working group. And we're going to have a joint meeting of both of those groups. You have a representative, John Isaacs, that's on the working group as Turnagain Community Council's rep. And I believe Kathy's an alternate. And so we're going to have a meeting on the 31st. And then there is going, that's in the afternoon. I think it's 3 to 5. And then there's going to be an open house that same day in the evening for general public. When those dates are finalized, we'll be getting that information out, which should be shortly. And talking on kind of the overview of the cargo developments, other than the North Link, I just mentioned that Matt and Mike Schechter are going to talk about the Alaska Cargo and Cold Storage Facility, which is planned along Postmark Drive in the bog. So on the west side of Postmark Drive, fairly close to the post office. They're working on their wetlands permit, and they're working on a draft environmental assessment, which is likely going to go out for public comment first part of June. And then the other development in the bog is just north of that. And it's FedEx's city station, where they're going to have parcel processing for shipment within the state of Alaska. So when the big flights come in from the lower 48 or Asia, that facility will be used for handling and distribution within the state of Alaska. So they got a smaller aircraft ramp in a warehouse building. That is going out for probably public notice on the EA also in early June. And they're also working on their wetlands permit so both of those developments in the bog are in a similar state right now. And we're still working on finalizing the lease with FedEx for that parcel of land. One other relatively new FedEx issue is they're proposing to build about a 43,000 square foot package handling facility, which is just for moving cargo in and out of, and that is going to be in the very southeast corner of their development on existing leased property that's currently being used for a large parking lot. So they're going to take up part of that parking lot and build one of these fabric tension structures, basically a very fancy large tent. And they're hoping to start construction on that thing this month and getting it permitted and start on that. So that's another FedEx project underway that is on their existing lease property. I guess we've got a couple others here. The T hangars that have been planned for quite a while along Lakewood Drive, just west of Helio Place, I guess it is, not too far from Echo GA parking. They're still working on through their design and feasibility planning on that. So there's no action going on that. And then, we talked to you before about a private hangar development on the east side of the Lakewood Strip near the south end. So kind of in the southeast corner of the Lakewood Airport there, next to the Strip anyway. And we are about ready any day to go out with an advertisement for competition to lease that property, because we had two parties show interest in it for private hangar development. The only other thing I have is the aircraft control tower relocation project. Well, we're building a new one, probably in about 3 or 4 years. Construction will start. That's under design. We're also working on design of some aircraft parking that are going to be displaced by the new aircraft control tower. And that is along adjacent to the, at least the preferred plan is adjacent to the existing Echo parking along Lakewood Drive. And that project, both those projects are under design, but they have a common environmental assessment, which is underway. And that environmental assessment, what we've heard as of late is it's probably going to be August or September before that comes out. That's all I have. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Okay, Al, you've got your hand raised.
Hey, John, a couple questions. We're hearing a lot about bird strikes on the lower 48. Is that affecting Alaska very much? And the other question will be the contaminants. There's been a lot of flights diverted because of, I believe, from Russia, the air contaminants. Is that getting back to normal now?
Well, the thing we had recently with air contamination was the volcano on the Kamchatka Peninsula.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty much died down. No new news on that I know of. And what was the first question?
Bird strikes.
Oh, bird strikes. Oh, yeah, we have bird strikes every day. I don't know if there's a renewed effort here. I haven't heard of one, but yeah, they're a continual concern. We have wildlife control out here year round. During the summer season, it's 24 hours, and they're trying to keep wildlife away from the airfield, and birds are part of that. And I was reading an ops report just yesterday. There was an owl that was picked up off the airfield, but other birds quite often, luckily not with any serious consequences, but bird and other, and ground mammal strikes on a periodic basis.
Thank you.
Hey,
President.
Karen? Yeah,
Thanks.
go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Johansson, for that good update. It sounded like there were 2 projects that were happening in the bog. Do you know how much percent wise of that bog these 2 projects would transform?
I don't have the exact number. It's not the entire bog. Part of the southerly part of the bog is used for an airport snow dump area, I would guess the total bog in there that's kind of enclosed by, kind of a contiguous unit there. I would guess it's probably about, being taken up by those two developments, something on the order of 70%, 2/3 of roughly.
So it would be a pretty significant change for that. Area.
Yeah, as far as the wetlands go, yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, just to clarify, you're talking about Postmark Bog, is that right? With the FedEx expansion and the Alaska cargo and cold storage projects?
That's what I was mentioning, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, John, I have a question. Turnigan Community Council submitted comments with regard to both the FedEx expansion and Alaska cargo and cold storage. And we requested that a noise barrier be put up along the east side, west of Postmark Drive and east of any of their development to address the additional ground noise that's going to be generated by these two developments. When you say they're working on their designs and that sort of thing, are they taking that into consideration? Has the airport had that conversation with them?
The only thing I know is we passed those concerns on to them. I don't know where that stands with them, but as far as I know, we've passed those comments on to both ACCS and FedEx.
Okay, is that something you could follow up on for us?
Yeah.
That would be great. We'd like to hear back to see, if they're taking that to heart with regard to, the noise mitigation, the ground noise mitigation.
Okay, I will follow up and get back
Okay.
to you.
And then I have kind of a similar question with regard to now kind of the re-release of leasing, since there is more than one business interested in developing T hangars at the southeast area in Turnigan Bog
Right.
of the strip. And when the first application went out for comment, TCC submitted pretty extensive comments. And we highly recommended that a buffer be retained of the naturally wooded, pretty thick wooded area between the Turnigan residential boundary and any kind of development to the west, and land leased out for any kind of development to the west. And so when you've re-released the lease application, since there's two interested parties now, have you modified the amount or the area of the lease to preserve any kind of buffering so that you don't lease out the entire mapped out parcel that was originally discussed?
Yeah, yes, the answer is yes. I'll have to get back to you on the details. There is a buffer.
Is that the one, Kathy, are you talking about the one that's weird, kind of as a community questioned where it was adjacent to the houses, right? Where we have all the wooded areas behind our homes right now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because it's still a very concern to us. Because originally they were going to, the original drawing, John, they had, from what I remember, is they presented as a walkway right behind people fences, like a little park, I guess, or something, walkways, which is, I think, is not awesome because right now we have trees there and wildlife walking. Really would like to avoid having people walking behind the fence.
Okay, I will dig into that issue and the ACCS noise barrier request.
Okay, and just FYI, that idea of putting in a trail sandwiched between the western edge of Turnagain residential area and the eastern edge of the Lake Hood area of the airport boundary, that idea for a trail was a really ill-conceived one by some trail advocate quite a few years ago. It's been at least 20 years or longer. And TCC has consistently been opposed to that. And we did get that project removed from the Anchorage Trails. I know it's called something else now, but essentially the Anchorage Trails Plan, even though it tends to just still be on paper somewhere for some entities, we absolutely oppose that. We were told by the airport at that point that yes, they would put up a chain link fence between, so you'd have a chain link fence, the residential area, chain link fence, a trail, and then another chain link fence, and then Lake Hood, seaplane base. And for that to go from Spenard Road up to West Northern Lights, it would be a corridor that would be a nightmare for if you encountered moose that happened to use that same corridor, and also impacts to the adjacent neighborhood. They may not want.
And we get bears there sometime too.
And bears.
Occasionally.
And plus we heard from the neighbors back then, that long ago, that they wouldn't want a trail right across the fence from their backyards. So that idea is a non-starter, and it needs to get off any plans that are proposed for that area.
Good, thank you.
I think it's on our master plan for Lake Hood. I thought it was still on some bike trail plans.
If it is, it shouldn't be, because we fought to get that removed when they updated the Anchorage Trails plan quite some time ago. And the assembly agreed with that and approved that amendment to the plan. So it needs to be, any proposal for a trail in that area needs to be shot down before it even gets out the door. Okay, does anybody else have any questions for John? Okay, and look forward to hearing back from you. On
Yeah, I have one for John.
Oh, yes, please.
Hey, John, there's a dead moose off of Raspberry, right before Kincaid Park. It's on Northlink Aviation's property. It's been there for about a week, and we've sent up numerous requests to get that taken care of. Would you happen to know the status of when they're going to remove that deceased body? There's a children's bus stop located exactly across the street from where that dead moose is, and we now have bear tracks that are out.
Yeah, my understanding is that moose is not on the Northlink parcel. It's west of the Northlink parcel. But that being said, airfield maintenance was going to try to get in there where they're wildlife people and hook up a I don't know, a dozer or something and drag it farther away from the neighborhood to the north toward the airfield. So that's the only thing I know about it. So there's
Okay, anybody else?
it is on the north side of the perimeter fence along Raspberry Road, as I understand it. I haven't actually seen it.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to
Kathy, Steve has his hand,
who else? Sorry, Al.
Steve has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Hey, John, I just had a short question. I understand that Amazon is going to take over their own distribution of packages, and they're going to take that away from the postal service. So is that going to create any changes with the airport?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't heard. Amazon, as I understand, is pretty quiet about what their plans are, but I haven't heard anything to that effect. That doesn't mean it's not underway.
Right.
Okay. I would think you would have insiders that find out that information for you there at the airport.
Okay.
You know, you have moles somewhere.
We got moles, but they're the little four-legged kind.
Okay, okay. Okay, looks like unless we have any last questions for John, and thanks so much, John, for providing airport information to us. We'll move on to old and new business. And so the first item is, sorry, did somebody say something? Consideration of approval of a letter to FAA with regard to the scoping opportunity to provide scoping items that we would like included in the environmental assessment that will be done, as John just mentioned, connected with the relocation of the air traffic control tower and Charlie parking, general aviation, 39 spaces for that. And FAA reached out to us because we attended and brought this up at a Lakewood stakeholder meeting a couple of weeks ago and invited us to submit items that we'd like to see addressed and assessed in the environmental assessment that will come out later on in August or September. So it's a lengthy letter, and it's still probably not quite where it needs to be in terms of exact language and what we want to include in it, but the board is putting this draft forth for potentially just an overall approval for us to go ahead and refine it and get it submitted as soon as we can. There wasn't a deadline associated with the request, but we'd really like to go ahead and get this submitted before our June 1st meeting. So John Isaacs, I will let you have the floor on this one, and we'll move from here.
Thank you, Kathy. As Kathy mentioned, we did get a letter from FAA, and I think they couched it as looking for public comment on the proposal to relocate the air traffic control tower, build a new one, and relocate the 39 parking spaces for the Charlie General Aviation area. And this would involve a couple things as proposed. First, it would involve building a new 23-story air traffic control tower where Charlie Aviation parking is, sort of about halfway between the north and south terminals. Those 39 general aviation spaces would then need to be relocated. And the first proposal was actually to put them between the Lakewood Strip and the neighborhoods. And there was sort of enough adverse comment on that that they have now made their proposed action to add 39 additional spaces to the north of the Echo General Aviation parking. And that would require some additional wetland fill, potentially removal of some trees, and also probably some relocation of Lakewood Drive. And so they're conducting an environmental assessment. And so we took this as a request for comments on scoping, and we made a couple of suggestions to them. We've made them suggestions in terms of what were some of the issues we think they need to address, and that includes issues on changes in civilian air traffic patterns by putting that tower there. It could definitely have some changes to Lakewood and other civilian air traffic patterns. We don't know if that means it'll go more over the neighborhood or not. We have some concerns about the potential fill in the wetland from the Echo parking expansion and what that would do in the way of impacts, make sure those are addressed. We raised the issue of that any construction traffic that's associated with that, we'd really like to keep off of Northern Lights Drive and use International Airport. Similar in terms of having to assess the noise impacts of putting 39 planes over at Echo and probably slightly closer to neighborhoods than where they are right now on Charlie, and any noise associated with construction. Air quality impacts associated with that, and then just make sure, as they're required under the National Environmental Policy Act, to account for the cumulative impacts of this proposed project with everything else that's going on in the airport, like the FedEx work, the Alaska cold storage work, and the proposed air park on the south side of the airport. So that letter is going into them. I don't have FAA's letter in front of me, Kathy, but you might take a quick look at that and see if it's asking for public comment in general, because if it is, if others are interested in submitting comments, we can make that letter available to people.
Okay, let me see if I can put my pause on that. I had it out earlier today. There it is. And this was a letter dated April 17th to myself as Vice President of Jernigan Community Council. And let's see. It kind of gives an overview of what they're doing. And so ultimately, this was from John Louis, who is the environmental engineer for FAA, and ATO Engineering Services, WSA, which I'm not sure what those that acronym stands for. John Johansson, you probably know. But the paragraph is, I invite you to participate in the public outreach process by responding to this letter with any information, concerns, potential impacts, relevant effects of past actions, and possible alternative actions regarding this proposed action, which means development of the relocation of the tower and the Charlie parking. Any information you provide will be taken into consideration by the FAA as it develops its environmental assessment. The draft environmental assessment is planned, they're anticipated to be available for public review and comment in August. So this letter is addressed to me and Jernigan, and so he's inviting Jernigan. But I can't imagine that if anybody else would want to provide input during this scoping period, before they come out with their draft, that they wouldn't accept other people's input.
Yeah, Kathy, I'm not sure if they've advertised this anywhere else. And so that's why I suggest if people are interested in getting a copy of that letter, I would email Kathy or myself, and we'd be glad to give you that letter because it provides some information on the proposed action and where to send your comments in.
No, I don't believe there was any formal public notice. And John, you were really kind of spearheading it at the land use committee level and the board level, that we do need to provide input before they come out with environmental assessment, to make sure they cover all the things that you covered, the laundry list of things that you covered, that there will be impacts. There already are impacts. And so this would add to those, to the Jernigan area, as well as the high values of Jernigan Bog. And we're talking about Jernigan Bog here. So out at the airport. And so, so it's unfortunate that that isn't part of the formal process to ask what should we even include and cover in the EA. But, thanks to our efforts, we have been specifically invited to provide input. And I think anybody should feel free to do that as well.
So I guess are there any questions about either the proposed action or the items that we have in our comment letter? Then I guess if not, Kathy, is then the next action to move for approval?
Okay, John, would you like to go ahead and do that?
Sure, I would like to move for approval of the letter to FAA regarding the proposed air traffic control tower construction and relocation of the Charlie Aviation parking spots.
This is Dan Gleason, second.
Okay. Anybody have any specific questions on any part of what John kind of summarized? Again, we'll if this motion is passed, John and I as land use co-chairs, certainly, and me as acting president, with both hats on, can go and just refine a few items, but not changing the essence of what the letter has right now in it, in terms of our requests for items that we want covered in the EA. So does anybody have any comments or questions? If not, let's go ahead and have a vote. So if you support the motion, then you can go and under the reactions and raise your gold hand, or you can just wave it like this. Well, don't wave, just hold it up like this if you'd like as well. Let's see here. Okay, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10, 11, 12. I see 12 hands. Does somebody want to confirm that? Do a double check for me. Everybody keep your hands raised so we can double check. I see 12. Okay, is anybody opposed? Everybody that said yes, let's lower our hands, and then would anybody like to raise your hand in opposition to the motion? Not, that passes 12-0 unanimously. So thank you, and we will follow up and make sure that letter is submitted. And thank you, John, so much for all your help in drafting it. I think it's, you know, these are all important issues for especially those neighbors who live in the northern part of Turnagain, where the proposal to relocate Charlie parking would be, you know, in that general area. So let's move on to our next item, business item. So Tessa, are you with us this evening? Where are you? There you are.
I'm here, yes.
Hey, Tessa, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself and let us know what you would like to discuss this evening?
Hi, my name is Tessa Renner, and I am a resident of Turnagain, and I am a sophomore.
Okay, could you, your volume is a little bit soft, so can you increase your audio?
Is that any better?
Can everybody hear Tessa okay? All right, go ahead and continue, Tessa. Thank you.
Okay. I was previously a student at Turnagain Elementary, and I'm talking here today to bring light to the Turnagain ice rink. Last year, it was decommissioned due to the lack of care and quality, and that became dangerous. And it was falling apart, essentially. And there is no further efforts that I know of that was restored before the winter time this year. Over the winter, I kept a lookout for whether it was functioning or functional, and during the previous winter, and it was not. I contacted the principal of Turnagain Elementary, Christine Dennis, and she communicated to me that it was decommissioned due to it being broken, which became dangerous. She also said that it was still in use during the winter, and that the PTA plans on rebuilding it as soon as possible. Because this is a vital part and nice addition to the Turnagain area for residents and students, we can only hope that the PTA can and the school district uphold as part of our community and rebuild it.
Okay, I could barely hear you, but if somebody else was able to kind of, if you could cover that very last part of what you said, I would appreciate it.
I had contacted the principal of Turnagain Elementary, Christine Dennis, and she said that it had been broken and that's why it was decommissioned last year. She also said that the PTA plans on rebuilding it as soon as possible. And they have no current date or any information on whether they're not going to rebuild it. So we are pretty much on a whim.
So PTA does plan to rebuild, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Plan to rebuild.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Tessa. Tessa had contacted me because she had noted that the rink had been dismantled over the winter time. And so I advised her to reach out to Turnagain Elementary and other sources to get more information. And that's exactly what she did. So thank you so much for doing that. And it's good to hear. I appreciate your interest in Turnagain Community Council at this age, and that you were able to find out some information that turned out to be good news for you. And I know a lot of other ice skaters who use that rink have used that rink over many, many years. So it's great that we know now that there's plans to rejuvenate it. So good for you. Yes, let's give Tessa a round of applause. Good for you. Okay, so thank you so much, and feel free to join our community council meetings regularly. And you're always welcome, although if you're not 18 yet, you can't vote on anything. But we certainly welcome teens to participate in our council agendas and activities and things that we're up to. So thank you.
Hey, Kathy.
Yes.
This is Zach Fields. How are you
Zach.
doing?
Hi.
I'm sorry to be late. I didn't know if y'all wanted another legislative report from the, I represent of course, the Forest Park part. Happy to do a report, happy to write notes. It's up to you all. I apologize for being late.
No apologies necessary. I know it's probably been a hectic time down in Juneau for you. Is everybody okay with breaking up our old and new business agenda? And before we get to the 2023 CIP program project ranking committee, forming a committee, that we allow our representative, Zach Fields, to give a brief report. Everybody okay with that? Okay, Zach, you have the floor.
Thanks. Last week, the Health and Social Services Committee reported out a child care bill that I've been working on with Julie Colomb, who's a Republican from South Anchorage. So that bill is now in finance. It'll be heard next week. And it contains multiple important elements, including expanding the number of families who receive child care subsidies, incentivizing high quality care, directing the department to align grants with high quality care, which we haven't done before. It establishes a corporate tax credit for companies providing childcare for C Corps, which are the ones who pay taxes. So it's a really positive bill. Also within the last couple of weeks, a lot of people who advocated for childcare funding in the budget were successful in having it added through Senate Finance. So my hope is that as the Senate has the budget on the floor and sends it back to the House, we end up getting the votes for concurrence because that funding was not in the House budget. The Senate also added $15 million. Hey, Zara, can we pause on the noise for 1 second? The Senate also added $15 million in home and community-based waiver services, which is really important for seniors and people living with disabilities. I introduced a bill about a week ago to address some of the issues raised in the U.S. Department of Justice report about children with mental health issues being sent outside to for-profit residential treatment facilities. That's House Bill 167. It received its first hearing in House Health and Social Services. And really the goal of that bill is to strengthen in-state care so kids are not being sent outside because I think some of the abuses documented in that report are pretty horrifying and we should avoid them in the future. And then this week I introduced a bill that would establish an income tax equivalent to the dividend for high income individuals. So I wanted to put out yet another option to increase revenue and improve the state's finances. And under that bill structure, people who earn $75,000 a year individually or $150,000 or more as a couple would pay an annual income tax equivalent to the dividend. And people below that threshold, as well as dependents or children, would not, of course, pay taxes. So it would make the dividend structure overall more progressive while ensuring we have some additional funding for social services. It would generate about $200 million a year. And, you know, in all the years I've been here, that amount of money has been enough to make a huge difference for schools and social services. So happy to take any questions. And if people had broader questions about what's going on in the legislature, happy to address them, but I'm assuming Matt or Jenny probably already covered those.
Actually, we did not have Matt or Jenny attend our meeting, so you're our lone legislative report person.
Well, let me add one item that Matt has been working on that's really important, which is it's a bill promoted by a constituent of his named Angela Harris to close the loophole in people deemed incompetent for trial, which follows up on the tragic assault at Lusac Library and a murder at the zoo. So we've been working really hard. Matt's been working really hard. Representative Andy Josephson, those of us on HES, to get that bill to both the House and Senate floor and pass it this year. And both Matt and Andy have done a ton of work on that really important public safety bill. And then in terms of bills Jenny's worked on, she was successful in advancing last week the non-discrimination bill, House Bill 99, out of the Community and Regional Affairs Committee. And I sit on Labor and Commerce, and we had a first hearing on her bill on paid leave, which is that's House Bill 100, which is another really important bill. And I actually think we've got a decent shot of passing both 99 and 100. So y'all have been very well represented in the last couple of weeks, as usual.
Well, thank you for all your hard work, everybody down there. Does anybody have any questions for Zach? When do you anticipate wrapping up the session? Does it look like it will not go into any kind of special session status?
Well, I certainly hope so. It's a little hard to say. If we vote yes on concurrence to the Senate budget, we will get out on time. Really the only meaningful difference, I mean, there are smaller items that are really important, but the main thing that the House majority has said at once is a dividend that costs about $900 million more than we have. And at the same time, the House majority leadership has refused to let any revenue bills on the floor. So to me, I don't really know how you can say, well, I want a dividend that costs, about $1 billion more, but I'm not going to let any revenue on the floor. That just, the numbers don't add up. So if they sort of, find a path to accept the Senate budget, which is a balanced budget, has a $1,300 dividend, which is larger than I would prefer, but we can afford it this year, then we'll get out of here on time. And if they sort of insist on a dividend that forces a massive draw from savings, then we will be at gridlock, because I don't think my caucus is going to support rating savings. And, rating savings on that at that magnitude requires a CBR draw or a 3/4 vote. And I don't think the Senate majority is going to support rating savings for a massive dividend. So, there's the potential for gridlock, but there's also the potential that we pass a balanced budget on time that funds education. So I hope we have the better outcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Nice to see a bunch of neighbors. Hi, Gail. Hi, Mike. Good to see you all.
Okay, well, you take care down there, and
Thank you.
we appreciate it. And our next meeting is June 1st, so hopefully we'll see you then as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we'll get back to the old and new business items on the agenda. And the next one is the Capital Improvement Program, TCC project ranking. And for those of you who may not be aware, every year the municipality puts out a list of both roads and drainage and parks and rec projects within our area, within, every community council area gets and ask community councils to rank projects as far as priority for what we think we'd like to see funded. And we've been doing this for decades. And so when this comes around, the input is due on June 15th. So for this meeting, we will see if anybody's interested in joining the board. That is always kind of the basis of this committee, to join the board in looking at the projects that we have been ranking in the past and see if there's any that we'd like to remove or add to, and then rank them. And then we will be voting on that recommendation, committee recommendation, at our June 1st meeting. So, so like I said, at this meeting, all we're doing is identifying anybody who wants to join the board in reviewing a CIP ranking list, and we'd be happy to have some input on, although I have to say that we've been very consistent with our ranking in the last several years, and we've been told many times that that's kind of a key for a project to kind of move up in the process to get funded, as if we're fairly consistent in our rankings and don't kind of do anything too crazy. But something can come up and it might merit doing a little bit of rearranging chairs on the deck, so to speak. So we'll just have to discuss that and see if anything pops out. So Anna.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. So I'm not volunteering for the committee, but I look forward to hearing your guys's priorities. And then I just wanted to share too, just one example of why the CIP list matters and why it matters. The ranking is last year we worked with former member Austin Quinn Davidson, the community council did, to get the repaving and restriping of Forest Park Drive on as a priority. So that's been a priority for a long time. It was on the Safe Routes to Schools list for this community council. And you know, it was time to repave, and those, you know, as you drive around, you can see a lot of roads that need resurfacing now. So we, or I should say, when I was still, you know, an officer on the council, we worked to get that amended and make sure that that was the #1 priority on the CIP list, and it was funded. It was added to the 2023 bond, which did pass from the voters in April. And so I don't know the timing on when that will occur, but that's why these matter. And so it's definitely things for long-term priorities, such as, for example, Turnagain Street, you know, that's been on a priority list for a long time, but also as there's opportunities to move smaller projects forward. Anyway, just again, want to emphasize that it does matter, and it has had an impact in this neighborhood. So definitely get your priorities in.
Okay. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you. Would anybody like to join us in, you know, meeting at some point, probably later in the month, to just review what we've done in the past and see if we want to make any changes, and then that will be presented for approval at our June 1st general membership meeting. Anybody at all? Karen, did I see you raise your hand? Yes.
Yeah, I'll join you guys.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else out there?
Yeah, I'll join you guys.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, so I don't want to pronounce it wrong.
Tatiana.
Tatiana.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you so much. Anybody else?
This is
Okay.
Dan Rogers. Is this something we could do over Zoom, or is it face to face?
You know, that would be what the wish of the committee is. What would be your preference? Would that make a difference if you join us or not?
Yeah, I've still got some work related travel that I'm doing. And just my background, I'm a electrical engineer that's worked up here for ever because I'm old. So yeah, I may have some reasonable insights into it, but I do have a couple decent sized projects down and see how it's going. So I'm kind of back and forth right now.
Okay, well, we typically meet in person, but you know, if you'd like to be part of the committee and it works out scheduling wise that we just need to do it via Zoom, I'm sure we can accommodate.
Okay. Well, if I can figure out how to do it from a mobile device, I'll drop an email in the chat. So.
Okay, great. Yes, if you can do that, please, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Karen and Tatya, can you give us your emails on the chat as well? Well, I know I have yours, Karen. Okay, excellent. Well, we will be setting a date probably later, maybe 3rd week of May-ish or so, depending on availability for everybody. So we'll get an email sent out later on to get that meeting organized where we can look at that CIP ranking list. Okay, next on the agenda, we have Steve Montooth, who would like to give a briefing on the Anchorage Audubon spruce tree giveaway. So thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. You need to unmute yourself, Steve.
I went to an Audubon meeting a month ago about invasive nature of starlings, and towards the end of the meeting, they brought up this notion of giving away seedlings of white spruce, which is to replenish the ones that have died because of spruce bark beetle. I'm sure everybody who's here tonight knows about that and probably knows where quite a few of them have died. So everybody probably knows White Keys, who's a big part of the Audubon Society. But what they decided to do out of their budget is to buy 10,000 of these seedlings. And when I say seedlings, I'm talking about something that's about a foot tall with a good root bound system. Probably like what you would buy at, any kind of plant you would buy in a small container. And so it's a pretty good root system. What I thought about that, and I looked at it and I thought that's kind of neat. So I told a couple of friends about it and they go, oh, I would want some. And before I knew it, they had told other people, well, they would like some too. And all of a sudden, it's just sort of rolled. And it came to the point where before I knew it, there was about 150 seedlings people wanted. So with the dead, because of the spruce bark beetle, all these dead trees, this is a heck of a habitat for birds. So now they're trying to reintroduce these plants. The white spruce is pretty vulnerable to the spruce bark beetle. However, not vulnerable until they get to be a pretty large mature size, and we're talking about excess of 60 feet. One of the things about this is it's pretty easy to reintroduce to the system, and most people would like to do that because it's so simple to put it in. The problem with doing this is the distribution, of course. With Mr. White Keys and the Audubons, they have 10,000 units. What are they going to do? They're going to have a long line of people to distribute one or two at a time. So they really can't do it. They can do a lot of giveaways, but they're wanting to distribute these in more residential areas as opposed to a big thing like a Cuddy Park or something where they can give away 1,000 at a time or something like that. They're really interested in getting them distributing in a larger area, like in communities, like on lots and personal lots. One thing they'd like to do is have people like me go out in the community, go around neighbors and see who would want some of these, and get a kind of a commitment, I suppose. And for a small amount of people, somebody like myself who could distribute it out to 10, 15, 20 folks, residences or whatever. What I'm asking is whether anybody volunteer, one thing, to tell us whether you want any of these. Would you be willing to ask neighbors or people on the streets, down the streets who have had spruce bark beetle kill, if they would like any of these seedlings? And of course, if you wanted to volunteer more, you could certainly do a larger distribution and canvassing. Okay, Kathleen, you have a question? I can't hear you, dear.
Oh, Kathleen, you need to unmute.
Sorry. Steve, one quick suggestion would be to put it on something like Nextdoor and Facebook with a contact.
Kathleen, I can barely hear you. What was that?
Put it on Nextdoor as an announcement, or Facebook. Use social media because you'll reach a lot more people than I think you will trying to get volunteers going from door to door.
Yeah, I think White Keys has done that already. I'm not sure. That's sort of something that he's done.
Well, we
by the
could do
way,
it.
if you were to do that, if you go into the chat, there's his address, there's my email address, but there's also a link that you could use. By the way, for anybody who's interested, there's a 4-page information that talks everything about, from the specifics about planting, the distribution, where this comes from, and all that. So Kathleen, I'll pass that on to Keys to see if he knows much about that. I believe he does, but if not, I think.
Well, maybe community councils could serve as a distribution, set up their own distribution event in their own neighborhoods. That might distribute them more widely and equitably throughout Anchorage.
Well, Kathleen, that's a good point, because if we had a lot of volunteers, we wouldn't want them to run over the same houses over and over again, or the same people. So yeah, that's
Right.
a really good point.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll look at the what you've put in the chat.
Yeah, please do. And if you want to talk to me anymore, please do. Feel free.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, Al, you have your hand.
Yeah, and just FYI, Steve, the memo also mentioned they're trying to limit 2 of the trees per individual home right now. If they have extras in the future, then they'll open it up again. I got the memo from the and I was at the FEC meeting, so just FYI.
Let's see. I've got a chat room that says the website is not working.
The link is
So-
not working?
That's what Tatiana has said, I believe, so.
I made a
Yeah, and
mistake.
I updated the link and I just posted a new link.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you. Hey, it's very colorful too. It's whoever did that is it's very cartoon-like, so you'll enjoy it.
Well, so, does the body want Turnigan Community Council per se to be a more formal part of this? Or do we just applaud Steve Montooth, who is a wonderful Turnigan neighbor, to kind of spearhead any kind of distribution for our neighborhood? And everybody that wants to can support him and or ask for some trees to plant. What do you guys think?
What about replacing the old ones?
I'm not sure what you mean.
So I'm looking at a window right now and my neighbor, he has beautiful spruce trees, but one of them is looking kind of dead. So maybe replacing, he can get a free one to replace that one. Is that something that can be arranged, or he has to remove the tree first, probably, obviously?
Well,
and
you
then
can talk to him. I don't know if you can convince him about removing it, but you can certainly we can certainly offer him. We can drop by. We had his address.
Okay, let me talk to him and see what he thinks, and then I can get back to you.
Sure. Part of the this issue is in sort of selling these is that I feel a little uncomfortable about asking people for their email address and their phone number, not knowing me very well. And so I give them mine, but it's kind of a weird thing. So I'm willing to give these trees away. And if they want to give me their phone number or that kind of information, that's fine, but I'm not pushing that. People kind of treat me oddly if I don't know them until I say it's free, then I get treated completely different. But this has been a real fun thing, and it started out just me offering them or telling to them, my friends, about this, and all of a sudden it's sort of ballooned out. So if this is quite a interesting thing, and if you want to do any volunteer work too, that's great. But so as far as the community council, I'm not sure what more they would do.
Well, like I said, it depends if we want to jump in and be more active and trying to get neighbors interested in some of these seedlings, or if what you're doing, Steve, on your own is great, and if others are interested to help out, because it certainly as is pointed out by Anchorage Audubon, of course, it'll take many years for these trees to become anything close to some of these beautiful older mature trees that have unfortunately gotten diseased by the spruce bark beetle. But it's a start, and it's with a little TLC, it'll pay off over time if we get some brand new trees growing in our area.
Yeah, plus we'll get a lot more birds too, I think. So that's the idea.
Hey, Kathy, this is Anna. Do you mind if I comment too?
Please do, Anna.
Yeah, thanks. So Steve had reached out to me, I think partly just as an individual, but I had suggested, and this is just something for folks to think about too, is I suggested contacting organizations like NeighborWorks. So I reached out to somebody who works there because they have a lot of properties around town, rental properties. There's also, if you're involved with a church or a faith group or a Rotary Club or, any kind of organization, that's another good way just to kind of spread the word informally, not because you would have to be the one helping people sign up, but I'm just thinking of large groups of people who, might jump on it. Because I know that it sounds like it's time sensitive since these trees have a week until they'll dry out. So just if you want to help just spread the word. If there's other groups that you're connected with, that's another good way. And just have them sign up, or maybe somebody in that organization would want to help with distribution.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We have a little time since they're going to arrive on the 25th. They have to get them out pretty quickly because there's a delicate nature to these plants. They have to keep the root ball damp, and they don't do too well with that root system bound too long. Key said that they're going to try to distribute them if they need to, like the Spenard Farmers Market and others too. So yeah, so that's a good idea, is to find some other larger bodies where they could distribute some.
Well, these are all great ideas, and I 100,000 seedlings sound like a lot, but I think there will be a lot of interest, and every suggestion that everybody's made, I think, will be a good way to
Well, 10,000, did I say 100,000?
10,000, not 100,000.
Okay, good. It was your fault. All right.
Well, 100,000, you never know. Yeah,
That's, well, they could probably use it.
this is. Yeah, I added an extra 0 to my little note here. Okay, well, if anybody else is interested and has some ideas or wants to work with Steve on any of this, please contact him. And certainly something, that I support. And if we had more of an opportunity if we had nothing better to do, let's put it that way, this would be something I'd certainly encourage our community council to get involved with on a more formal basis. But we're just really fortunate that we have a Turnagain resident who's excited about this, and looks like that we just may get a lot of trees planted in Turnagain. So, and thank the Anchorage Audubon for doing this. I'm a former board member of that organization, so so that's great to see them do something worthwhile like this.
I have a quick question, Kathy.
Yes.
Do we have a connection with the homeowners associations as well as a community? Do they join any of our typically meetings or anything like that?
No, not typically, unless there's something specific that they would contact us about. We don't normally have any kind of interconnective workings with them. So that's
Because that would be something because I don't know if they're the ones in charge probably of allowing if they have a homeowner association. For example, we don't have a homeowner association in my specific area, but next door duplexes they do. And so I don't know if that's who is in charge of their tree planting. I would think
if they through social media and other means of getting the word out, if there's any residents who live in an area where there is a homeowners association, then they could check, with that group and see if that's something that would be allowed. So I don't know how we'd find out and try.
Okay.
Yeah, good idea. Yep. Okay, well, why don't we wrap this up? Thank you again, Steve, for kind of taking the lead on this informally on behalf of our Turnagain neighborhood. We appreciate any efforts that you're undertaking. And if anybody wants to help Steve out, then please let him know. Okay, the last item that we have under the old and new business is Northlink Aviation Development Proposal. As was discussed at the top of the meeting, I was contacted by Sand Lake Community Council Officer Matt Sanders to see if he could get a few moments on our agenda to fill everybody in on what's going on with that large development there north of Raspberry on the airport property. And so so as a courtesy to another West Anchorage Community Council, I have told him he could have 5 minutes, and now we've also allowed Mike, forgot your last name, but anyway, who is an attorney for Northlink, to also speak to this this development proposal. So Matt, you have the floor, and thank you for attending.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Kathy and the Turnagain Community Council for allowing us to have a discussion. For those of you that don't know, there is a 120-acre parcel that is located off Raspberry, just east of the FCC building and west of the UPS parking lot. The 120-acre parcel is a 55-year, they have a 55-year lease for that property. I'm pro-development. It's the right development, but it's in the wrong location. It's 700 feet away from our coastal trail users, from families and houses. And the scope of the project should scare everybody. And so with that, what we'll say is there is erroneous information that's within the environmental assessment. We tried to originally address this last year in June 2022. However, we were not given a full 30-day public comment period as in the regulations. So we have procedurally, there's several issues in that in itself, but I'm going to digress for a second. One of the issues that we have is they're going to be doing, essentially it's 700 feet away from the nearest houses, that coastal trail, and they're doing glycol recycling. It's the second one in the nation. And so essentially they're going to service all the planes that come in, the air cargo ships. They're going to spray all the glycol. They're going to be able to recycle it, is what they say. And it's supposed to be great. However, the only other airport in the nation is a airport in Portland, Maine. Their climate is not like Alaska. They only do some glycol spraying for about 3 months of the year, and they're about a third of the scope of what ours are. In this environmental assessment that they push through, they have a retention basin located at the southwest of the project. And in their study, it shows that the water flow is going to go uphill northeast back into Little Campbell Creek, not the 1,000 feet southwest as all the contour lines show you, going into Little Campbell Lake. Little Campbell Lake was one of the ones that was identified as having PFAS in it already. There's 3 contamination sites that are located in and within the facility. This is all in there. I think it's 255-page environmental assessment. I'm sure Mike will be able to fill us in with. In that environmental assessment, they also didn't do a very good noise study. Their noise study was conducted over 3 days. The batteries kept dying. So they only had a handful of hours worth of data. There was no north to south takeoffs. And so the noise issues that they captured weren't real. They also don't account for what the new noise increase is going to be with the project. Originally, when the project was started 2.5 years ago, it was going to be a $550 million project. All the aircraft was going to be tugged in by a vehicle. They since have lowered the scope of the project down to about 220 million is what I'm hearing. And it's not tow in anymore. It's going to be power in, power out. So all of those exhaust fumes are going to be pushing onto these residents. But I'm getting to the fun part, which is the biggest issue. The PFAS from those, the PFAS has been found in and around the proposed development site, has PFAS, and it's sitting on top of 3 water tables. Those 3 water tables feed 100 wells directly to the south of this project, of which we heard earlier that there's already positive findings of the PFAS. One of those wells just found it's called PBAS. It's like it's the PBOS, and it's essentially it's a lighter molecule, so it travels faster. So the issue that we have right now is in August of 2022, ADEC, Alaska Department of Environmental Concerns, came in and said, hey, nope, don't do this project. It's going to be a Flint, Michigan style situation on the hand due to the contaminants that you say in your environmental assessment that are here that we have already closed down. Please do the soil samplings, do the water wells, and Currently, they did start the water well testing, but they did not complete the soil samples. We also have not completed the analyzation of the testing. So per their August statement of they weren't going to pass and approve an environmental assessment before that's done, they've now gone back on their word. So they are literally have approved, the FAA has approved the environmental assessment before the testing has been done. So what that concern is when they go to demo that earth that potentially has contaminants on it, it'll seep into the ground, into one of those 3 water table ways and go directly into the wells of the houses located to the south. Northlink Aviation refuses to do a watershed survey. So again, they're going back with their DOL engineers that were paid to sign that paper that says that the water run is gonna go northeast uphill.
You know, I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap up, please, Matt, so that we
Yes,
can.
ma'am. So the end
move on to
state,
mine.
we'll debate this they have a public hearing that's gonna be set for May 30th at 6 p.m. at the Lakefront Hotel. We're asking for people to show up, listen to both sides of the arguments and make a stance. So this is our time as a public to be able to come together and make sure that we do responsible and ethical development in the state of Alaska.
Okay, thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate it. So Mike, would you like to take the floor and respond to some of the things that Matt indicated were problematic?
Kathy Johnson had his hand up. Galen.
Why don't we hold off questions until we have Mike go ahead and have the floor as well? And then we can open up for a few questions.
Howdy, neighbors. Let me start off with this. We've gotten to a point in the world where a disconnect from science and truth and reality shapes our discourse. Nearly all of what you just heard is something between a half-truth and completely untrue. And has no relationship to the science, to what's been done on the site, to what ADEC has done, to what the FAA has done, to what has transpired over the last 2 years while this project is being developed. I'm proud to say I've done a lot of project development work as an attorney. Most of the times you're having a discussion about, well, is this something that's going to harm the environment, or what's the least way we can harm the environment as we develop this for, to serve the needs of human populations for different things. The fact of the matter is, and I know that this community council has dealt with it and addressed it for a long time, the reality of an international airport bordering these neighborhoods. And it's important for the city. I know all of you probably like to travel, like to take advantage of the airport, but you also don't want to have the impacts of the airport dumped on your neighborhoods because you happen to live by the airport.
This is for air cargo, not for commercial travel.
Mr. Sanders, I gave you had your opportunity. Thank you. Air cargo, that's actually a good point. Air cargo, in addition to the movement of freight and people around, our airport serves as an economic driver in our community. I don't think you need to look around much and understand that economic development in our community is important. The reality is we are an important cargo airport in the world, and that's not going to change anytime soon. But what can change is how our airport is utilized, how airplanes stage on the airport. So there are 3 things that happen with airplanes at our airport that create issues for the neighbors, for the area. One of those is noise, one of those is emissions, and one of those is glycol, propylene glycol that's used as de-icing fluid in the winter. Let me first talk about noise and emissions. One of the things, and I'm sorry that we can't have a project on the north end to help these things on the north end. Yes, we are going to be power in, power out, but we are going to be, Northlink's hard stands will all have ground power. One of the biggest drivers of emissions and noise at an airport, of ambient noise at the airport, is the use of auxiliary power units on planes. When planes park, they can't turn off. That's life. And when they don't have ground power available, they use an accessory power unit, an auxiliary power unit, which is basically just an engine that's not a lifting engine, that burns jet fuel the entire time they're parked, creating emissions and noise, and polluting our environment. Every plane that parks at Northlink is a plane that is already coming to Anchorage. And instead of sitting and having an auxiliary power unit running for several hours while the plane changes, while cargo moves in and out of the plane, they'll be plugged into ground power and all of the engines will be off. Propylene glycol. Right now, our airport dumps 735,000 gallons on average per year into Cook Inlet. Now, Mr. Sanders is concerned about where water flows. Where water flows before something is developed, and right now that is 120 acres of basically pervious surface. Where water flows now is where it flows naturally. When you develop a project, you put in water and sewer infrastructure so that things drain into cisterns and retaining ponds and pipes, and they go someplace. So yes, the water is going to go, the things on the airport or from our project are going to go north because that's how it's being designed. We're not dumping into the groundwater either under our project or to the south. Everything will be connected to the utility system like any other development on the airport. And that water will be directed to where it goes. Now, for most water on the airport, when it's draining off of something, there are oil water separators and other things that keep some things out of Cook Inlet, but propylene glycol doesn't get collected by those things. And so when we de-ice planes, it goes into the snow, it goes into the snowpack, it goes directly into the system. And as Turnagain well knows, there's an awful odor out on the coastal trail from glycol being shot into the inlet every spring. Now, yes, this is the second in the nation recycling facility, but what the development of Northlink will be able to do is not just for airplanes de-icing at Northlink, but allow for the collection of glycol from planes to be recycled and put back into use. It's not particularly novel technology. The reason it's not in use in a lot of places is because it frankly just doesn't always pencil out. And let's talk about so top to bottom, we are a development that, yes, it's going into airport land. It's not new airport land. It is going next to a neighborhood. But these are all folks who either signed or bought a home knowing that it was next to an airport. Mr. Sanders saw a document when he bought his house that said, you're going next to an airport. These are some of the things that might happen. For noise in general, the big drivers of noise at the airport are takeoffs and landings, and as I mentioned before, APUs running constantly. We don't drive takeoffs and landings, and we don't have, we're not going to have APUs running at our site. So by and large, this will be quieter than living next to FedEx and UPS and cargo port like we do up here.
Mike, I'm going to ask you to try and wrap it up so that we have time.
Let me talk real quickly about PFAS. Our site is next to the fire training pit, which I think everyone here probably knows, if they've been looking at airport issues, has been used for AFFF, aqueous film forming foam that's used for putting out fires at airports. That foam will continue to exist on airports until the FAA is finished developing its next gen of firefighting foams. But whatever is on the property, and I will tell you, there is no detects on our property. PFAS has not been detected on our property. You have a pervious surface that's open, that's been open to the sky and water for decades. And the neighborhood to the south that is still on wells, there are 3 wells that have some level of detection, but by and large, they're well below the limits, the EPA limits. And there's no obvious connection between those wells, all the rest of the wells in the neighborhood, including wells in between the fire training pit and the neighborhood, have no detects for PFAS. One of the things that you typically do for environmental remediation is you cap the soil to keep water from moving through it. Any soil that's moved on the Northlink site will be at a minimum, I believe it's 15 feet above groundwater. We're not coming anywhere near groundwater. When we're working near the fire pit, the only thing we will be doing there is filling. There will be no grading, there will be no excavation near the fire pit. And for the entire rest of the property, we're moving soil that has never tested positive for PFAS. ADEC wanted more testing. They didn't say Flint, Michigan. They didn't say anything like that.
How many testing did you guys do? Was it 12 in the property bounds?
Mr. Sanders, please. So on our
Mike, please, please,
sure.
please.
All of our testing. I
30
put the
more
link-
seconds, please.
Yes, I put the link in the meeting chat.
Okay.
All of our testing has been up there for a long time.
And where's your spill response plan?
Let him go ahead and finish, Matt.
A spill response plan for oils and water, Mr. Sanders, is something that gets put in place. It's a standard thing. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. It gets put in right as you're starting operations. It doesn't have to be done months in advance because people know how to handle oil and fuel. To wrap up,
Why don't we just open it up for a
Sure,
couple of
sure.
questions? Jonathan, you've got your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I have a list of questions for, first of all,
Try to be brief.
I am unclear on exactly where the 150 acres is, sir. Can you succinctly explain?
I can put up a diagram if I can share a screen.
Yes, please. That would be helpful. I appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah, he
Sure.
has a map on their website. Mhm.
Okay, while you're doing that, Mike, this will be you say the second facility of this kind in the nation?
For the glycol recycling. So it's not going to be new.
Asked if it would be the second in the nation at a major airport.
I want to be specific as to what we're saying is that thing, right? So there's not going to be new ways of de-icing aircraft. The facility, and I believe I think second in the nation is correct, is the recycling of the glycol.
Okay, why is it necessary, since it has not been used at this time heretofore? What is the size of the aircraft? Are you talking about the largest freight liners coming through Anchorage?
This development is for 747-800 aircraft.
So you're going to taxi to and from hundreds of airplanes in a matter of days to and from this section of the airport, correct?
Yes.
So these aircraft, these cargo aircraft, since you mentioned it was cargo only, are all cargo carriers going to de-ice their aircraft at this facility?
No. So let me, how is do I have control of sharing my own screen?
Al,
I got it. It's on.
okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Are we all hopefully seeing the
Right.
airport with a red boundary as opposed to my secret nefarious plans for world domination?
We got it.
Okay,
But we'll want to see that next.
sure.
So that's next to the South Airport?
it's next to the South Air Park, and so the things that go on at FedEx and UPS, so FedEx does my cursor follow?
Yes.
Okay, so the things that happen at FedEx and UPS, the things that happen up here, it sounds like your concern is, are all of these aircraft taxiing down here to de-ice before taking off? No. De-icing of aircraft that are parked up here will remain up here. De-icing for aircraft parking here will happen here. Incidentally, as you know, right, aircraft land here, they exit here, and then taxi all the way up Romeo, up to here. If they're taking off north, they got to taxiway all the way down Sierra to get to here.
Right.
And all of that. Taxiway Zulu is being rebuilt by the airport or extended as part of the project. We're going to be able to make, I believe we're going to be able to make an exit here. Aircraft are going to be able to, when they're landing 7 right, are going to be able to land, exit here and come right in. That's a lot less taxiing time. That's almost 8-9 minutes of a 747 taxiing, which is about the most inefficient time it's running its engines. This
Hold
is
on, Mike, hold on.
Sure.
I'm an aviation buff and I'm at the airport a lot, or general aviation as well. And I'm not sure I've seen any 747 freighters come in and it wasn't the north-south runway.
No, they land 7 right all the time. I have buddies who are Atlas pilots. I actually the first I have a video so I used to be the airport attorney. I have a nice video that airport operations took me out there to take of my buddy landing 7 right as his first ever real 747 landing.
Okay, will this increase the cargo aircraft coming in on that runway now as compared to the north-south runway and the north?
No, operations are dictated by wind and the tower. Whatever's safest for going on, that's where people are taking off or not.
Okay,
if the answer is, will we
sorry,
reduce?
Mike, excuse me, Mike, I'm going to cut you off and thank you for those good questions. Dan, you've got your hand raised. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, you mentioned that that you need to have your contingency plan or your spill plan doesn't need to be in place until you go into operation. That's only partially true because I'm just going through a C plan or an incident management plan process, and there's you have to submit it to ADEC, and they have a 90-day.
Sure. Sorry, I was being right. We're in the environmental assessment process. People don't write their spill plans during the environmental assessment process. There's, and they don't do it while they're, starting excavation. They do it when, you're installing lighting cans and electric stuff and you're getting ready. When you're 90 days out, when you're 6 months out, 7 months out, not, 8 months out, 10 months out, who knows,
Right. Okay.
Right. We haven't, we I assure you. So the airport leases, which I'm very familiar with, require spill response plans. They're specific. We cannot have fuel facilities. We cannot have glycol facilities without having the same or similar spill response plans. Obviously, it'll be specific to our equipment and our site. But those things all have to be in place, well before we're up and running.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know we, Kathleen, you have your hand up, but we really need to wrap this up.
I have one more question, Kathy.
Okay, sorry.
One of the issues that I have with our airport is the type of engines that are allowed. at Ted Stevens International, which is the type 2, which is the noisiest for, is there any way that we could get the type 3 or type 4 engines put in place at Ted Stevens? Because we're one of the few left that can do a type 2.
Yeah, I mean, that I think is something for the airport master planning process, that John and Kathy, John Johansson and Kathy were talking about earlier. Noise studies and updating the noise study, I believe, is part of that. That, you know, what our project has or doesn't have. I don't believe there are 747s operating with type 2 engines, at least not modern 747. 747-800s are not typically operating with type 2 engines at this point. I think you're mostly talking about, you know, some of the DC-3s and other particularly loud things. Some of the older MD-11 aircraft might still be in that range, but that's really an airport issue and not particular to our development.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So.
Catherine, I just want to say that these two gentlemen were allocated 5 minutes each. They are invited guests. My suggestion to each of them is that they request to be put on the agenda for the June meeting and be given a time for a presentation. It is very rude to talk over our vice president who's moderating our meeting. And as invited guests, I think you should be aware that we have protocols for manners and respect for officers and our agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, and I didn't mean for this to get as detailed as it is. But just to wrap up and reiterate, the public comment period on the EA is now started, and the deadline is May 30th, and that's also when an open house of sorts for this EA.
It will be a public meeting and people will be
meeting.
able to provide comments on the EA, and there's a draft finding of no significant impact and record of decision. Those are both available on the website, on the Northlink website, which I provided a link to in the items. And I appreciate everybody lending me a few extra minutes to respond to these issues. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, and thank you, Matt, for bringing us to the Turnagain Community Council meeting this evening. Anything at the airport, you know, we're sensitive to, because we all have that in common. Sam Lake, Spenard, and Turnagain abutting up against, you know, a facility that is technically very incompatible to be located so close to the neighborhood, but that's just how things have evolved over the decades. Okay, so now we're going to get to committee reports very quickly. And with regard to the Lineary Park Citizen Naming Panel, I'm one of 4 people on that, and we've been collaborating with Tom Carosi with the Parks Department and to name certain facilities at the park after people that we feel are deserving to be named. And we've had this discussion before, so I won't get into detail about that. But the municipal code process is that the citizen panel, once it's named and we've been meeting, that we hold our own public hearing on the proposals. And so that has been set for May 24th, although a location hasn't been finalized yet. It'll probably be somewhere in the City Hall building downtown. And so just wanted to give you a heads up if you are interested in that, to provide testimony. I'll be chairing that public hearing. And so we would love to hear what neighbors have to say if they support the facilities being named after 4 people that have passed on and have significantly contributed to that park or is being remembered in that park. So that's pretty well all I have now. After that will happen, then it will go before the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission for another public hearing or on their agenda to discuss. And then ultimately it will go to the Assembly for approval. So that's my report for the Citizens Naming Panel. So we'll move on to an update on the Woodland Park Development Proposal east of Turnagain Street. And it's not much of an update, but let me get my notes here. I talked to JJ Brooks, who is in the process of dealing with his purchase of about half the land that's east of Turnagain Street and south of West Northern Lights that was you know, in the news, so to speak, and getting a lot of our attention and working on it last year about this time. So with regard to JJ, he said he didn't have anything enough to report to attend our meeting, but I'll be checking with him to see if he would come to our meeting or attend our meeting in June. But in a couple of weeks, I talked to him on April 27th. So he said in a couple of weeks. So there will be drilling rigs on the property. So everybody has a heads up on that. They're going to be doing geotechnical soil boring as well as ground penetrating radar to see how stable the soils are and to see if, because that land was previously developed before Northern Lights was upgraded and expanded back in the mid 80s in that area, to see if there's any foundations or rebar or anything that's underneath the surface of the area that could be problematic for developing. So that's about it now. So if you see some equipment out there, that's what they're doing: soil boring and penetration radar. So so that's what I've got for that update. And John, if you want to go ahead and provide an update on the Fish Creek Trail project.
Thanks, Kathy. One last thing on Woodland Park, Kathy and I had talked about, now that Adam Trombley has left the municipality, we need to figure out who with the municipality is the point on that particular project. Something that remains a concern is the need for a traffic study and what sort of traffic a development at Woodland Park might put on particularly Turnagain. So that's something we're going to be keeping an eye on. With regard to the Fish Creek project, there really is no update. I did get a hold of Matt Edge, who is the consultant working for the project team, and they have not gotten their contract renewed yet. So it sounds like a lot of the studies they were thinking of doing this spring, geotechnical and otherwise, have not gotten underway. There's no new information on their website, so we really don't know if they're making any progress. We have asked Matt to come before us in June to make a presentation for an update on the project, and hopefully they'll have some new information then. Some other land use committee items. Doesn't seem to be anything new coming out of the municipality of Anchorage on any Title 21 amendments. We will be keeping an eye on those just to see if there are any amendments or hearings we need to attend. And then we did have a land use committee meeting to discuss airport issues, a number of which we have talked about tonight, including the master plan update coming up, and it sounds like they have a date for a advisory committee meeting and an open house at the end of May. So that will be good. We are going to try to schedule one of our quarterly meetings with Craig Campbell and go through the list of issues that we have with the airport, including traffic and Northern Lights, the status of the leases, as John Johansson had mentioned, by the southeast corner of the airstrip there, and other items. So hopefully we will get that meeting here within the next couple of weeks. But I think that's pretty much the items that are before the land use committee at this point in time.
Yeah, as if that's not enough.
As if that's
okay. Yeah, we're keeping busy trying to track all this stuff. So so thank you to John and other members of the land use committee for putting in time on a lot of these issues. So I think that is the end of our agenda, and we are running 5 minutes behind schedule, but that's pretty good considering all of the things that we covered this evening. So I appreciate everybody hanging in there till the end of the meeting. And so thank you all for attending, and hope you all have a wonderful summer. So again, we will meet June 1st, and then we won't be meeting in a general membership way for July and August. But we can always schedule a special meeting if the need arises. And the land use committee will still be active throughout the summer. So we'll still be actively doing some things on a lot of these things, the projects that are moving forward. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening because it's still light out, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I move that we adjourn. This is
Second.
Kathleen.
Okay, and Dan,
Dan
would you be our second?
Second, Dan Gleason.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any opposition for adjournment of our meeting this evening? I don't see any hands, so meeting adjourned. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you
Thanks
again,
all.
Adam, for hosting our meeting. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, Dan,
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're gonna download your files and for whatever your needs are, right? I don't have to do anything for you on that part?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so if you need anything, because it does go to my computer too, just let me know.
Yeah, I'll get with FCC tomorrow and we'll take care of that.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you,
Good night.
Kathleen. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
I can go ahead
Thanks
and
for
end it now.
joining us.
I'm gonna end the Zoom now.
Okay, great.